Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Business and Banking Dialogue Show. Welcome to the new timing of BBD, which is the Business and Banking Dialogue. We started on September 1 at 6 o'clock, and I'm hoping that it's beneficial to one and all, especially those who have started going to office after the lockdowns have been easing out. And those participants had expressed the opinion that they are finding it difficult now because afternoon is they are in office time, and so a lot of people have appreciated the 6 o'clock. I hope it is beneficial to everyone. I'm KK, your moderator for this show. As usual, we are live in EPS and social media channels, namely YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to talk about Internet of Things. The Internet of Things, which is the digitizing the physical world, has received enormous attention. Connectivity is undergoing evolutionary change in most parts of the world. The future of things, namely IoT, is already happening. The Internet of Things payments are based on initialization and processing of payments over IoT objects or machines, such as wearables, smart appliances or cars, your refrigerator, your television, etc. IoT payments, also known as the machine-to-machine, M2M payments, will revolutionize payments, where human beings will not initiate payments, or at least they will be either the payments will go automatically, or at least wait for an approval of some sort. Rather, they will receive a notification only after their smart machines have made or requiring approval to make the necessary purchases. Example, let's take one or two examples and we will dive into the discussion. Let's say your refrigerator or your washing machine AMC payment on renewal date. Automatically, the refrigerator or the washing machine, if it is connected to the IoT, will automatically do it for you. Cars that pay tolls and parking will be done automatically. Thermostats that pay electric bills based on projected monthly usage. Airline baggage tags that authorize payments for luggage allowances. Digital assistants, a digital assistant that buys songs or articles which are your favorite of its users. So today, to discuss on payments industry 4.0, that is a new payments and machine-to-machine payment, and we call it for Industry 4.0 and beyond. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Rakesh Verma, who is head of payment products, government relations, regulatory affairs, and public policy at Reliance Industries Limited, India. You will see very soon a brief of his profile on the screen. So nevertheless, I will read it out for you. He has over 15 years of rich and extensive experience in the area of digital payments, spanning across government relations, regulatory affairs, public policy, payment products, and payment consulting. In the past, he held various positions at Visa, KPMG, NPCI, HDFC Bank, and ICICI Bank, largely in the payments domain. He has been associated with implementation of multiple payment projects of national importance and has won various awards for his contribution. Rakesh is passionate about digital payments and loves public interest communication to influence consumer behavior towards digital financial services. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming young and dynamic Rakesh Verma. Good evening, Rakesh.
Good evening, sir. Pleasure to be a part of this platform. And good evening, everyone who is sort of listening and watching this live telecast over the multiple social media channels. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm sure your show is doing a great job. If I'm not mistaken, this is the 93rd episode. Is that correct?
Yes, I think so. Correct. Okay, thank you, Rakesh, for coming and coming, and we would like to share with you as to what's happening in the world of IoT and payments 4.0. But before I did talk about IoT, but I think listening from you will be better to tell, if you can tell our audience, just to put the perspective for this entire 1 hour show, if you could tell what is IoT with a couple of examples, and that will be a great help.
Okay. So thank you so much. Before, let's say, I get into, let's say, for example, the couple of examples of the use cases of IoT, some interesting things I would like to share with the entire audience who is there. First thing, the term IoT or Internet of Things was coined by a gentleman known as Kevin Ashton in the year 1999. And Kevin Ashton is a British technologist. So he has been like sort of credited with coining this particular term. While IoT has been coined by him, there is no one who has been credited for coining the term IOP, which I call Internet of Payments so far. So probably I think it came out as it is, or maybe no one has claimed the, what you can say, that responsibility that I have coined this particular term. But yes, Kevin Ashton.
I will give it to you, Rakesh. You are IOP.
So that's one thing. Secondly, if you look at the entire IoT industry today, so as per a report which was published some time back, there are going to be around 20 billion connected devices with the internet, or what we call it, your IoT devices, by the end of this year, which is 2020. And by the end of 2025, the number of IoT devices are going to touch almost like 65 billion. So currently we stand at 20 billion IoT devices, which is going to go to 65 billion in the next 5 years. So that's going to be a huge, substantial increase in the number of connected devices. If you look at the market size of IoT currently, the market size of IoT is approximately around $3 trillion annually. So it is expected to reach around $3 trillion by 2026. So that's the market size of the IoT related services. And within, if I talk about within the IoT, if I have to, let's say, talk about specifically about the banking and the financial services within the IoT, the banking and financial services as a subset of the IoT industry, which was like around $250 million in 2018, will go and touch around $2,000 million by 2023. So these are some of the like facts which I want to place before we, let's say, sort of get into a broader conversation around the IoT and the IoT related aspects. Now, let's say historically what has happened. If we look at how the IoT has evolved over a period of time, let's say, for example, the earliest example, if I could remember and quote, is, let's say, for example, the computer, which I remember that because of the fact that when I used to go to school in the 1990s, I was like first time exposed to the computer during that period of time. Now, the computer which we used to see at that point of time was like sort of communication which used to happen between the computer and human, which used to be like a one-way communication. The human was the user. The user was to like sort of give certain commands to the computer. As the time progressed, we had things like your punch cards, we had things like your keypads, we had things like your speech, which were used to execute commands to the computer. That's the like sort of stage 2, we can say. Then becomes, let's say, the further evolution happened in terms of when we were giving these commands and asking the computers to do certain jobs. They started giving us some sort of reports or feedback back to the human who was like sort of giving the command. So that's like stage 3 of the man and human, what you can say, the human and the computer interaction. This is how it happened. So which is like really interesting to see how the things have evolved over a period of time since the kind of the computers have came into existence. One very interesting example which I would like to quote at this particular point is that I think it was the year 1972 when the first online transaction was executed. And when I say online transaction, it was executed by the students which were studying on the one hand. So there were a few students who were studying in the Stanford University in California. And the other set of people were the students who were studying in the MIT, Massachusetts. So there were these people came together. They executed the first online transaction in 1972. And you will be surprised to know that the item which was exchanged by the way of that online transaction was weed. So interesting example to quote. However, the payment for that particular weed happened offline. So the payment was not online, but but the buyer and seller came online.
Okay, interesting, very interesting.
So this is how the things have evolved over a period of time. Now coming back to specifically your question in terms of what are the, let's say, for example, different use cases or operational scenarios of the IoT, which we look at today, and how that IoT has like sort of got into the IOP, Internet of Payments. So a couple of examples, if I have to give. There are like sort of example of a smart refrigerator. So there is a smart refrigerator which keeps on identifying what are the different items which are kept in that smart refrigerator. Just to give an example, what the smart refrigerator can do, let's say, basis the configuration which we do into it, it can keep on reading, let's say, the level of, for example, I'm just quoting a few items. Let's say the level of milk which is there in the smart refrigerator. Let's say milk packets which are there. Let's say the other example could be the ice cream packets which are lying in the smart refrigerator. The other thing which it could monitor is, let's say, the eggs which are lying in the refrigerator. So it will keep on constantly monitoring. And on the basis of the configuration which has been done in the smart refrigerator, and once these items go below the threshold limit, the smart refrigerator initiates order to the nearest or whatever the grocery stores on which you have configured to replenish these items. And on the basis of the order which has been placed, it also automatically initiates the payment for those particular order. So that's one very classic example of how these smart refrigerators are coming into existence and how they are using the internet and how that internet is being used for making the payments. The other example which I can think of is, let's say, for example, smart washing machines. Now, these washing machines have the capability to understand, let's say, so these washing machines have the storage facility for your detergents and fabric conditioners, etc. Now, again, basis the threshold limit, once the, the quantity of the washing powder or the fabric conditioner goes below a threshold limit, the washing machine itself orders them and initiates the payment for them. You have a very classic example. So while we have heard about these two examples, I came across a very interesting examples of IOP, which is of a swimming pool.
Okay.
Yeah. So swimming pool. So we know that on a constant basis, we need to maintain the pH level of the water in the swimming pool. And how do you maintain the pH level of the water? Because by adjusting the chemical composition of that water, so there could be certain chemical, the amount of chlorine and etc., which has to be there, and it should be in a right balance in the swimming pool water. Now, there are sensors which have been deployed in the swimming pool, which keeps on monitoring the pH level of that water, and basis the pH level, whenever the pH level there is some sort of disbalance which happens in the pH level, it immediately identifies the chemicals required to maintain the right level, right pH level. And on its own, the sensor orders those particular chemicals to the maintenance companies or the pool maintenance company, and also initiates the payments for that. So that's a very interesting example. Another interesting example is smart printers. So today, the printers which we use, they use toners, they use inks, etc. Right? Now, these particular, let's say, these smart printers, once the ink goes below a certain level, they can initiate the order on their own, and basis the payment credential which has been like sort of stored into that, they use that payment credential and make payment for that. As you already mentioned that, yes, there are examples of smart baggage tags, which can make payment on their own to the airlines for the check-in luggage. You have smart electricity meters, which can like sort of read the, let's say, for example, the monthly usage, calculate your usage with the bill which you need to pay, and on its own, it can initiate a payment. There is another very interesting example which is related to, while you talked about the cars making payment for tolls, parking, and fuel, there is another very important use case which is there related to car also, but it is for the insurance premium payment. So let's say, for example, on the basis of the driving behavior of the owner or the person who is driving, and also on the basis of the wear and tear of the vehicle, the car, the sensor which is there in the car, it calculates this is how much the premium which needs to be paid, and automatically before the due date arrives, the car initiates the renewal of the premium. So these are like some of the very interesting examples which I have seen, and I've read about, not seen, but read about some of these interesting examples of IOP using the IoT.
Okay, excellent. So, ladies and gentlemen, you've been hearing from Rakesh about what's happening and what's coming. Okay, so your day-to-day payments that you make very soon will just disappear. I mean, many things are changing in this world, right? And with COVID coming, many more things are getting changed. So this could be the next revolution that's happening in the payment side, that things will get automated, that IoT will do things using the IOP, and will make your payments that much more easy, frictionless, and so before you don't have to remember the annual maintenance contract of your microwave, micro oven, for all you know, and for your refrigerator and your washing machines and your regular cable payments, etc. Everything is possible. I generally I will talk a little later, but this is a very interesting subject. So I kind of request you to kind of start putting your questions across for Rakesh, so that I can get it across to him as much as possible, and it becomes a very interactive discussion with him. Now, remember, ladies and gentlemen, this is a vast subject and relatively new. Okay, so it's not that every question that you put can be fully and satisfactorily answered by Rakesh, because it's a subject is so vast and so new. So, but we'll try. I'm sure Rakesh will try his best to give you the answers. So do put in your questions quickly, so that I can take it across to Rakesh as soon as possible. Rakesh, the IoT-based payments are usually triggered through smart autonomous devices based on real-time data analytics, right? Like you said, the threshold level of eggs, or something, milk, etc. Why IoT-based payments have not taken off at a scale in India or elsewhere?
Interesting question. While the subject has started gaining traction, and we all have been hearing about the use of payments in the connected devices, what you are saying is absolutely correct. We haven't seen much, or you can say, we haven't seen a takeoff of IoT-based payments at a scale which we would have expected. Now, let us look at it, why this has happened, or why this is happening, right? While the vision of IoP payments may look appealing, there are certain technical and social factors that need to be suitably addressed before we look at the wide-scale adoption of the internet-based payments or IoP-based payments. Now, what could be those, let's say, for example, some of the technical factors and social factors? If you look at some of those technical factors, the first thing which comes to our mind is, as a user, the first thing which comes to our mind is the security aspect, right? So today, if you look at the smart devices or the connected devices, which we talked about a few minutes before, let's say, for example, your refrigerator or your washing machine or your printer, or let's say, for example, your swimming pool example, which I gave, security in these devices, these sensors, etc., is still relatively immature. So that a level of security needs to further evolve and get mature. That's one thing. Now, let's say now going these one step further. Now, let's say as a user, when I have to like sort of configure my payment credential in that particular connected device, I have to configure my credit card number or a debit card number to the connected device. Whether as a user, whether I'm comfortable in doing that or not, because at the end of the day, I know that my device is going to make the payment on my behalf without even asking for my authorization. So that's another way to look at it. Another thing, let's say, for example, when you talk about all these connected devices and smart devices, another thing from the technology point of view, which we need to look at is that the interfaces which are there, which, let's say, for example, the interface of the connected device, which needs to interact with the, let's say, the acquiring infrastructure or the backend acquiring infrastructure, which has to be there, they are still in an evolving phase, right? So what you can say, the entities and the companies need to work extensively on coming up with foolproof interfaces which can function seamlessly for what you can say, initiating the grocery orders, making payments, and completing the transactions, right? That's second thing. Third thing is, let's say, for example, while we talked about the interface at the device end, we also need to have your sort of APIs, the right set of APIs, application programming interfaces, which are required at the other end. Let's say, for example, in case of the refrigerator or the washing machine, the grocery store, which will receive the order, that grocery store, that entity also needs to have the right sort of APIs integrated so that it comes to know that the order has come. It should come to know that the order has been initiated by a device. It should also come to know that the payment for that particular order has already been made by the device. So all these things are like sort of continuously evolving. So we need to still work upon streamlining some of these things. So that could be one of the reasons from the technology perspective that these type of payments are still in a very nascent stage. Some of the social factors which I could think of, which are still not allowing us to sort of build a confidence on this is today, if I look at my regular payments, I'm still wary of storing my card credentials on the e-commerce website when they ask to store your card credentials, so that you are not, you don't have to take the effort of inputting your card number, 16-digit PAN number all over again when you visit the site next time. Today, we think twice, thrice before storing our card number over there. Now, think of a scenario that your device asks you to store the card numbers or your card credentials to make payments autonomously. So that is more towards doing changing the consumer behavior and giving a comfort to the consumer in terms of that this device will not misuse your card credential. That is one. Secondly, we also need to look at the trust and the confidence which the user can have on that particular device, right? So these are and why I'm bringing the angle of the trust and confidence is also because of the reason that tomorrow, if the device malfunctions, how are you going to rectify that problem? How are you going to, or you can say, disable the payment credentials which you have already configured there? So these are some of the things. These are some of the factors from the technology perspective and some of the factors from your user perspective or a social perspective that is still we have to go many more miles to overcome these challenges before we see a large scale takeoff of these or these type of payments.
Okay, yeah, true. I think anything new does take time, and I think the most important thing is the confidence of people who use it. If that is confidence is built around it, I think the usage will be much more. So Rakesh, like I said, there are questions asked by the participants. They could come in the form of in the Q&A box, or there could be even a question directly by somebody directly to you. To answer or not, a prerogative. And So let me take the first question that is coming from Chittaranjan Chattopadhyay, very frequent and a regular participant in the BBD. Thank you, Mr. Chattopadhyay, for this today. He asked a question. Presently, the digital payment solution are focused on real-time, low value, high volume, peer-to-peer payments, e-commerce payments, and financial inclusion drives only. What may be the future direction in this area?
Okay, so I think if when we look at the internet-based payments, when we are talking about, I think we need to evolve the whole framework around it, right? Currently, we don't have a very structured framework around it. So when I say framework, it has to be in terms of an operational framework, and a technological framework, a regulatory framework, right? All these technologies, these things which we are talking about today are still in a very nascent stage and still evolving. While people have started picking up or like sort of started using your real-time payments for both P2P and P2M payments, the biggest challenge which I see currently in case of the IoT-based payments is there is no framework which is currently available, because things are still in a very nascent stage. So once we have some sort of a structured framework available, definitely we can see these type of transactions picking up. And as I mentioned a few minutes back, the consumer behavior, the consumer mindset will play a very big role in this, because that trust and that confidence has to be built among the consumer, that even if they configure their payment credentials over these smart devices or connected devices, wherein things are making payment for things, until and unless that trust and that confidence is built, I think this will continue to remain a like sort of long journey to see a takeoff of these kind of payments.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chattopadhyay, for a good question. The second question I have is coming from one Mr. Devendra. He says, what sort of information does Internet of Things objects communicate? I mean, what kind of communication do they have? And his second question is there a standard or a regulatory board set or being planned to set up so that these are pretty standardized and fraud-free?
Okay. I think very interesting question. And as I just now mentioned, that the entire framework needs to evolve around it. While there have been certain, what you can say, pilot studies or what you can say, these examples which I quoted about the smart devices making payments have been like tested at a very, what you can say, in isolation. Once some sort of progress is made on these, definitely it is up to the industry to build an entire framework around it and take it back to the regulator in terms of these are some of the new use cases which we are thinking of around payments. And now the regulator or the government needs to come up with the right set of guidelines which could like sort of provide a framework. So it could be related to the technology, it could be related to operations, it could be related to the commercial aspects as well. It could be related to, let's say, for example, the volume and the value of transactions, etc. So this is an evolving framework. We have a long journey to cross so far the internet-based payments are concerned. But I'm pretty sure as we progress on this particular path, things will evolve. Let's say, for example, if I have to go back 4 years, right, in 2016, when the UPI was launched, at that point of time, there was no regulations, no guidelines available with respect to the UPI. But as the things progressed, as this particular payment service was launched, as the features and functionalities were built around it, the regulations start coming in, either from NPCI or from the RBI, and we progressed on those. Since this is a new area, I'm sure we will face a lot of challenges as well. We will come across so many things which we may not have anticipated at this particular time, but which we'll have to look at once we start the journey.
Absolutely. Yeah, anything new takes time to get regulated. Thank you, Devendra, for, I think, a very good question. So, Rakesh, how IoT-based payments are likely to impact existing payment instrument cards such as debit cards, credit cards, UPI? They are all existing and they are all functioning well for quite a number of years now. So, what is the impact of IoT on these? And my second question is, how payment network operators need to prepare themselves to adopt to emergence of IoT-based payments?
Okay. I think pretty interesting question. I think two parts to it. One is that how the existing.
Rakesh?
Yeah. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah. Now in between you went off. So go ahead.
Okay. Okay. So interesting
Yes,
question.
I can
think
hear
two
you well.
parts. Two parts to it. One is in terms of what is the likely impact of internet-based payments on the existing payment instrument, and second is how the existing network operators need to prepare to adopt these kind of emerging payments. If you look at the payments which are being made by the connected device, at the end of the day, while the device is initiating a payment, but it needs to ride on a payment trail. Right now, that payment trail could be a debit card, it could be a credit card, it could be UPI, virtual payment address, etc. Right. So these connected devices, at the end of the day, they are going to supplement the existing payment rails, and whether it is, as I mentioned, debit card, credit card, or UPI, or any other payment systems across the globe. So they can very well ride on the existing payment rails. That's point number one. Point number two, as the things evolve, as the things become more clear, as we understand this technology better, definitely we can look at creating a new payment rails altogether for the for the payments which are made using the connected devices. Another thing to look at it, if you look at the connected devices are likely to increase the digital payments multifold. Let's say, as I mentioned at the beginning, that currently we have around 20 billion connected devices, and by 2025, we are going to have around 65 billion connected devices. I'm not saying that all connected devices will start making the payment, but at least even if a few million of them start making the payments, we will see a multifold increase in terms of the digital transactions. Now, for these, the items for which you were earlier paying through cash at the grocery stores will now be start getting executed right from your device, be it your refrigerator, be it your, let's say, for example, your washing machine or your car, etc. Definitely, the existing payment rails will see a multifold increase in terms of the number of transactions. In addition, because the new use cases will open up. However, when we see, let's say, how the payment network operators are going to adopt the emergence, there are a couple of considerations which need to be made by the payment network operators. And in my view, some of these considerations could include an ability to identify a connected device transaction. So what I essentially mean to say is, if a particular payment transaction is initiated by a connected device, the system should be having the capability to identify that this particular transaction is not being initiated by a human. It has been initiated by a connected device autonomously. That's point number one. Point number two, there has to be a mechanism for the constant monitoring of such transactions, which are initiated by these smart or connected devices, in order to identify any instances of incessant orders. So let's say, for example, if the connected device malfunctions, assumingly, and it starts placing the order repeatedly, let's say all over again every minute, there has to be a certain mechanism to monitor such kind of what you can say instances in the payments network. Third thing, if the network monitors that there are certain incessant transactions or repeated transactions which are being placed by these connected devices, there has to be a certain mechanism to stop or block those transactions instantaneously. So let's say, for example, today, if we talk about whenever I do a credit card transactions on a completely new platform on which I have never transacted earlier, and if it is usually, if it is a high value transaction, immediately I get a call from my bank asking whether I have initiated this transaction or not, because they want to make sure that this is not a fraudulent transaction. We need to look at a similar kind of an arrangement or a mechanism for the what you can say, these connected device transactions as well, because in case if the device is malfunctioning, it is placing orders repeatedly, we need to take care of those situations as well. Then let us think from the customer point of view as well. Let's say, for example, something has gone wrong. Some repeated orders have been placed, right? Now there has to be a suitable grievance redressal mechanism or an online dispute resolution mechanism for these kind of a transactions, where then the customer can go say that this is what happened to my device. These transactions have happened because of the malfunctioning which has happened, and this is what my grievance is. And then at the end of last thing which I would say is we also need to have a suitable customer protection mechanism in place to address these kind of challenges. So from these point of view, I would rather say that the payment network, the existing payment networks or the new payment networks who would like to have a play in the internet-based payments need to consider all these aspects before they sort of scale it up.
Okay. Yep. Thank you. That's well said, Rakesh. So Rakesh, I said that we have another mode of asking questions, and that is somebody can ask you a question directly. So we have a very experienced banker, Harish Prabhu. He would like to ask a question. Harish, remember, this subject is new and it is vast. So it's not that every question can be answered, but Rakesh, I'm sure, will try his best to. So go ahead and ask a question.
Rakesh, two questions. One is, isn't NETC the only existing IoT payment mechanism in the country at the moment? That's
okay. So what you are saying, yes, to an extent, we can consider the NETC transactions as a kind of a, what you can say, a semi-autonomous. I would still not consider it to be a fully IoT-based payments, but yes, I could still consider it as a semi-autonomous payment. I completely agree with you that we can actually consider to be one of the examples in India.
Sure. The second is, and more importantly, for a robust IoT ecosystem to sort of emanate, right? Especially when it transitions from the current monitoring only. Today, IoT, I think,
went out for.
I think there is a disturbance, but anyway, currently, IoT is used only for monitoring, right? So when we transition, from monitoring to transactional, nature, right? The tenets of which has to be based on a robust ML/AI mechanism, cybersecurity, human interface, and human interface would mean that through gestures, to voice, to biometric, to whatever it is, right?
Right.
They have to all work in tandem, right?
Absolutely.
In order for it to, have a transactional case. So before a transaction takes place, are we, to be honest with you, are we dreaming? This kind of a utopian world? And, because such a seamless system, can it even exist, and leave alone the social impact it may have on people's lives? So your viewpoint.
Okay. Great question. Maybe at this particular time when we are discussing about this subject, I think it looks more aspirational at this point in time. But yes, I'm a firm believer that we will soon see what you can say, adoption of these kind of payments. And as we can see, let's say, for example, if I have to give, I'll equate it one of the examples. And let's say, for example, today, let's say for your mobile phone bills, or for example, your electricity bills today, we usually tend to register for what you can say, bill payments in our internet banking, and we allow on a monthly basis to get our debit cards or the credit cards or the account get debited on a month-on-month basis, and these payments go on their own, right? Now, I will pick one of the three things which I mentioned from this. Let's say, for example, the electricity meters. Now, we consider a case where we have smart electricity meters. It calculates at the end of the month how much consumption I have done. It calculates on the basis of the unit rate, what is my monthly consumption in terms of the value, and automatically it can initiate a payment from the stored card credential. So while we have taken some sort of steps already, but it is more in terms of how far as a customer or a user I'm comfortable in allowing the device to trigger those transactions. But yes, definitely we have a long road to go. We need to build what you can say trust and confidence, and at the same time we need to have robust technology systems in terms of your artificial intelligence and your machine learning capabilities in order to ensure that we are able to control if anything goes beyond, if anything goes wrong in such kind of a scenarios. And I'm sure that as we move forward, we will evolve all those things. Maybe few years down the line, may not be immediately, but yes, definitely I see a what you can say scope and opportunity few years down the line from now.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Harish. And thank you, Rakesh. We had a little bit of audio problem, but I hope it is sorted out now. Rakesh, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, cool. All right, great. So the next question comes to you from Pushpendra Khandelwal, another gentleman who is very frequently listening to our programs. It says that his question is, he gives a hello to you first. In case of IOP, what are the precautions to be taken by system to take care from frauds? Because fraudulents are likely to prepare themselves to cheat, or what will be the security measures? Basically, he's talking of frauds and security around IOP.
Correct. Interesting question. And definitely when we talk about the IOP Internet of Payments, first understand the challenges which could come, and then we will sort of come on to the how do we address those challenges. So let's say there could be instances where your connected device could be hacked because it's connected to the internet. There could be instances that someone hacks your device. That could be one of the challenges which you could face. The other challenge which we could face is that the device malfunctions and it starts order repeatedly. That's the another challenge which we can see. The another third challenge which I see is, let's say for example, especially in case of the cars, usually there is a tendency that people sell their old cars and buy new ones, right? So the cars usually change hands. And also we can say that whenever, let's say, our refrigerator or a washing machine becomes slightly older, we tend to replace it with a newer model, right? Now, think of a scenario that we have stored our payment credentials on these devices. If your device is hacked, if your device malfunctions, and if you're changing your, let's say, connected device, you are selling it to someone, or if you have loaned your device to someone, how do you ensure that the payment credential which is there in your device is not misused? Or how do you ensure that certain guiding principle or certain, what you can say, measures are available to secure your payment credentials and stopping the unnecessary debits in your payment credentials? Now, there are a couple of ways to look at it. Let's say, for example, when we are storing the payment credentials, we can look at, let's say, for example, restricting the volume and the value of transactions which are being initiated by these devices. So let's say, for example, I can say that my smart refrigerator should not order, let's say, more than once in a week for the eggs. We can also configure similar kind of restrictions for the other groceries which you want to do. At the same time, we can also put, let's say, for example, restrictions on the value of the transaction. So let's say, for example, I don't want my smart refrigerator to place an order, let's say, beyond 500 rupees per transaction. I don't want it to place. And any payment which has been initiated beyond 500 rupees should get declined automatically. That's the other way of looking at it. The third thing is, While I want my connected device to like sort of place the payment even for the high value items, but I want that, let's say, the payment which are above a particular limit, let's say above 500 or above 1,000 rupees, they should come for a, what you can say, authorization to the user or to the, like say, the owner of the device. So let's say if Rakesh Verma is using these kind of devices, and if my device is ordering for something, let's say above 500 rupees, immediately I should get a notification on my app or on my mobile phone that there is a particular transaction which has been initiated by this device. Would you like to confirm it, or would you like to authenticate it? And basis that, if I find that transaction is okay, I say, okay, fine, go ahead, do it. That's the other way. Then what we also need to look at it, we need to fix the roles and responsibilities of all the entities which are like sort of involved in this particular ecosystem. So right from, let's say, for example, your device manufacturers, to your device owners, to your acquiring entity, to your acquiring bank, to your payment network operator, to your issuing banks, etc. So there is a whole lot of what you can say framework and the roles and responsibilities, what are the do's and don'ts, etc., which needs to come up to address these kind of challenges.
Okay. So thank you, Mr. Khandelwal. It's a good question that you asked. So we talked about IOP. We talked about the processing capabilities of IoT for payments. Then you talked about that these IOPs can be linked to the existing cards and debit cards, and perhaps to the existing debit cards and credit cards and other payments, that UPI that is already there. Do you foresee, or do you think that if you have a separate bank grade digital money for processing IoT or IOP payments, is that something possible, doable, and is that something you would like to give clarifications on?
Interesting question. So I think as the things will evolve, definitely we will see more clarity in coming in terms of this. So let's say, for example, while we are using the existing payment rails of, let's say, debit card or a credit card, etc., which can be put to use for processing the IoT-based payments, one of the important considerations which we need to look at currently in IoT-based payments, which is from the acquiring point of view, mainly from the acquiring point of view, because when we enable or develop these capabilities in these smart devices of making payments on their own, there has to be a robust infrastructure and a technological capability which should be available at the device end, and also at the acquiring entity end, and also at the acquiring, what you can say, infrastructure end. So that is one way that, yes, when we talk about a separate bank grade level money rail, so that is one way to look at it. Second is when these IoT-based payments are processed or are initiated by, let's say, these connected devices, we need to first understand that these are being initiated by the devices itself and not by humans. Considering the same, the role of these acquiring entities and the acquiring infrastructure becomes important. And all these entities and the infrastructure which is there on the acquiring side has to be suitably equipped to handle and process such type of transactions. So that's an important consideration. The other important thing which I would like to say is that the entire processing infrastructure, right from the device to your acquiring, to your network, payment network, to your issuing side, need to have or need to develop the capability to identify that these are non-human transactions and these are like machine-to-machine transactions. And accordingly, the different aspects of transactions need to be developed around it. So to answer your question, the existing, let's say, for example, your standards which are available maybe in the debit cards or credit cards may not be able to do a proper justice to these kind of transactions. Maybe we need to either further evolve the existing standards, or we need to come up with the altogether new standards to accommodate these kind of transactions. So yes, definitely, as the things evolve, we may need definitely bank grade digital money rail. And if you see like a sort of a growing adoption of such type of devices and transaction, you never know that there could be a separate payment rail which could be developed for these kind of transactions, which is entirely different from your existing debit card or a credit card payment rails.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you. I have a question to you from Hitesh Takhar. It's come through the YouTube channel. Mr. Thakkar asked your question. Please share your views how IoT payments can leverage blockchain or DLT to remove some adversities in implementation, and how can it be built to standardize for IoT marketplace?
Okay, interesting question. So if you look at it, when we talk about the blockchain and the DLT technology, at the end of the day, whether we are using the current technology or whether we want to build a new payment trail which is based on the blockchain technology, it is entirely up to how the system adopts these kind of transactions. It is up to the industry and the ecosystem to decide, let's say, if they want to scale it up further, whether there is a merit in adopting the blockchain technology or the DLT based technology for these kind of a transaction. So let's say, for example, whenever my device is executing a transaction, immediately all the nodes which are there in our DLT framework, immediately they come to know that this particular transaction has been initiated by a device, right? The benefit of doing that, at least which I see at this point in time, is that, let's say, for example, and as mentioned, if the device malfunctions and the device starts placing orders on its own multiple times, immediately all the nodes in the entire network will come to know that there is something wrong with this particular device, and that the reason it has been placing orders or multiple times. Immediately a trigger could happen and those transactions could be blocked, and immediately all the nodes in the entire framework would come to know that these are like sort of unintended transactions, and which has to be dealt separately. There has to be a separate mechanism available to sort those to handle those kind of a transaction. So yes, to say yes, definitely a blockchain or a DLT could be put to use for creating a separate payments rail for machine-to-machine transactions.
Very interesting. Excellent. So we see so much of use of these of IoT. I have another question coming to you, Vivek Bandhu. Ask a question I think it's come through Twitter. He says, "What is the big difference between Internet of Things and sensor businesses? Because everything is on sensor based, right? Exactly. So how is it that it is IoT? So what's the difference between IoT and sensor businesses?"
Okay. So I think let us look at it. I'll look at it from two examples. Let's say, for example, when I talked about the swimming pool examples, the swimming pool case which I talked about is basically a sensor-based thing only. So you have to place a sensor in the swimming pool which constantly monitors the pH balance, right? Now, when this particular sensor monitors the pH balance, what do you do if let's say the sensor comes to know that the pH balance there's an imbalance which has occurred in the pH balance? Now, if you have placed a sensor, you will definitely like that report or that information to come from that particular sensor which is lying in the swimming pool to the maintenance company, or maybe to the, let's say, for example, whosoever is the owner of that swimming pool, so that a corrective action could be taken. Now, that corrective action could be taken in two ways. The sensor could place an order on its own, or maybe that it just passes on the information to the services company or the maintenance company, or it passes the information to the owner and let the maintenance company or the owner decide what action they want to take. That's one of the things. The other example which I could think of is, let's say, for example, in the field of agriculture. Now we have seen that there is a lot of use of these sensors in the agricultural fields. So these sensors keep on monitoring the, what you can say, the moisture level of the soil. They also keep on monitoring the fertilizer, the right balance of fertilizer which is there in the soil or not, the humidity and all that stuff. Now, the sensor has been placed. They are constantly monitoring, let's say, the moisture level of the soil, the what you can see, the fertilizer level, etc. Again, the same thing could happen. Would you like your sensor to take a corrective action on its own and place an order for, let's say, the fertilizer? Would you like your sensor to, let's say, start regulating the supply of water in the agricultural field so that it should reduce, increase as and when required? Or would you like that sensor to pass on that information from the device to the, let's say, the owner of that field, the farmer of that field, so that he takes a corrective action? So the sensor, if we are placing it for use in particular use case, I think it makes very important that it should be connected to the internet, and that information which is getting generated by that particular sensor or a device should be analyzed on a constant basis so that we take the corrective action. Otherwise, it is of no point to us to put a sensor and not take corrective action.
Absolutely, absolutely. Can we take one audio question directly from, I think, Tyagarajan? Can you please unmute and ask the question?
Rakesh, quite interesting and insightful. This puts us in cloud 7 because these are all new things to happen and quite exciting. So having said, my question is, since there's an explosion of payments happening, I mean digital payments happening, with this machine initiated, or you can say Internet of Things initiated transactions, the settlement and reconciliation will be a major, I think, issue. I mean, I'm coming to the point of dispute resolution, which is one of the key regulators' perspective on customer satisfaction. With the customer grievance redressal is yet to gear up because these are things to happen. Are we ready? And what is your views on compliance and regulation? Probably the new set of technology can play a role. Maybe some new technology like machine learning or something could help us in getting this reconciliation done. Your views on thoughts.
Okay. Thank you for this question, and I think that's a great question. As I mentioned earlier as well, one of the important considerations which the entire ecosystem will have to look into while we further progress on adoption of this particular technology, when I talk about which is like your use of payments in the IoT, the important consideration has to be around how robust your grievance redressal mechanisms are, and how do you protect the customer interest. So these are two of the important things. Why these two things become important is because of the fact that, let's say, for example, tomorrow if something goes wrong with the device, and as mentioned earlier, that the device is being hacked, and some hacker has started placing some, what you can say, repeated orders. Or let's say, for example, the device malfunctions on its own, right? And there is a case of multiple orders and multiple payments which are being made. Now, there has to be a robust grievance redressal mechanism which needs to be put in place by all the system participants, wherein the customer can go, log his grievance and say, hey, look, guys, while I have connected one of my devices, and these are the device identification number, etc., and these are the transactions which has been initiated by my device on its own, and I want a suitable redressal of my these transactions. That's one. Secondly, another important consideration is there has to be an ability in all these connected devices or smart devices to enable and disable the payment credentials. We don't want a situation wherein, let's say, for example, I enable my payment credential once, but I'm not able to disable it. So let's say why I'm talking about this is because of the reason that, let's say, tomorrow as a user, if I come to know that my device is not behaving properly, or let's say tomorrow when I want to sell my device to someone else, let's say be it a car or a refrigerator, I should disable it. I should be able to disable my payment credential before handing over that device to someone else, so that nobody else is able to misuse my payment credential. And if the person who is acquiring my device wants to continue to use that particular device in a connected fashion, he or she may configure his own payment credentials. That's point number 2. Point number 3, let's say, for example, if something has gone wrong, there has to be a certain grievance redressal mechanism which protects the consumer's interest as well. So like the way we have seen in 2017, the Reserve Bank of India came out with limiting the customer liability for the electronic payment transactions. We have to come out with similar kind of a framework for the machine-to-machine transactions. So definitely, as the framework, or as we move further, things will evolve, and we as an industry, which you are part of, I am part of, we all will have to come up with those kind of mechanisms to address all these concerns.
Thank you, Tyag. Thank you, Rakesh. Couple of questions, if I can take, Rakesh, although it's past the 7. You okay? Just a few minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. The IoT-based payments could become forerunners in the case of embedded commerce through connected devices. Of that, there is no doubt, which is also the next, shall we say, the frontier in digital payments.
Yeah.
What are some of the other innovations or use cases expected in the space of embedded banking or finance?
Okay. Interesting question. So let me answer it from a different point of view altogether. So I will not go into the banking or financial services. Let us look at what is the most important thing which is going to happen across the world, including in India. And that particular development doesn't come from the financial services industry. That development comes from the telecom industry. So we are standing at a stage or at a cusp of moving from 4G to 5G. 4G technology to the 5G technology, right? Now, when we talk about the 4G technology and when we transition from the 4G technology to the 5G technology, it actually opens a complete new opportunities which we can use in the banking and financial services. So to give you an example, let's say, for example, once the 5G technology is made available in, let's say, in India or anywhere across the world, how do we put to use that 5G technology for the banking and financial services industry? While we know that the advantages of the 5G technology is that, let's say, for example, it provides very fast internet. It reduces your latency to almost like a very nominal level. So how do we sort of leverage those things in the banking and financial services? And as I look at, let's say, for example, once the 5G is available to us, I can put it to use for, let's say, creating or using your augmented reality and the virtual reality in delivering the financial services on my smartphones. So let's say, for example, I can another example which I can think of, I can deploy sophisticated robots in the branches which are capable of not just interacting with the consumer branch walk-in customer, but they should also be able to take the request from the customer and execute the customer request, maybe a financial request or maybe a non-financial request. But for that to happen, you need to have a very robust connectivity, and which could only come from a 5G. Another thing, let's say, if I look at, I can put to use the 5G technology for, let's say, a seamless video interaction between the customer and the relationship manager, which allows the relationship manager to address various queries and requests in an online mode seamlessly, right from the comfort of sitting in your, or say, drawing room or home. I can also use, or I can also put to use the 5G technology for, let's say, in advanced, developing advanced AI algorithms. I can put to use for real-time translations. I can also put to use the 5G technology for building the IoT-based asset management use cases. And I can pitch in all these things from my branch as an employee of a bank branch to my wealth management customer who is sitting at his home, and I can sort of give him his entire walkthrough of his investment portfolio and suggest certain like sort of new investment to him. To share a very interesting thing with you is that I'm not sure how many people are aware about it, but the research and development wing of the Reserve Bank of India, which is IDRBT, has already put in place a 5G lab to test the use cases related to banking and financial services. So the work is going on.
Okay, that's interesting. Very interesting. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's past the 7 o'clock, and would like to end the show. Truly, Rakesh, it was eye opener. It's new, but yet I think a significant revolution that's coming up. I would like to close this session with this few words, saying that I believe that IoT could have a significant and possibly revolutionary impact across society. But we also think that the lead time to achieve these benefits, as well as the widespread adoption of IoT applications, may take longer than anticipated, because there is so many things to be done along with it from a governance and from a security point of view. But that machines will start communicating with each other and make many of human decisions will come, and we must welcome such changes as long as there are proper standards, checks and balances provided in these technologies. With these few words, I would like participants to join me and thanking Rakesh. Rakesh, truly great, excellent topic, and the incisive information that you have given to us. Thank you so much for coming, spending your time with us, and look forward to meeting you some other point of time. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Thank you, Rakesh.
Thank you so much for inviting me and making a part of this particular series and a dialogue. Thoroughly enjoyed and look forward to interacting with all of you guys again. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. At this point, I would like to also thank some of the participants who asked very good questions. Mr. Chittaranjan Chattopadhyay, Harish Prabhu, Mr. Pushpendra Khandelwal. We also had Hitesh Thakkar, Tyag, and a couple of others. I think I missed. Vivek Bandhu, I missed. Yes. So thank you very much. Those were very good questions that you asked. Tomorrow we are having one of the who's who of banking industry, Mr. V.G. Kannan, the former CEO of Indian Banks Association, and he will be speaking on the topic beating financial stress with IBC. Do join us in the 94th session of Business Banking Dialogue with V.G. Kannan. This will truly be insightful and informative session with Mr. Kannan. Thank you for watching India's largely watched daily webinar show on banking. Tomorrow will be the 94th on the trot session from EPS. Look forward to meeting you again tomorrow. Good evening to all of you. Thank you and bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.